the 9th century, a time of iron and salt. Across the North Sea, fierce warriors reigned. They were the Vikings. From the frozen fjords of Scandinavia, they came. These were not men of fields or farms. They were sea wolves. They craved adventure, sought riches, and worshipped strength. Their longships, adorned with fearsome dragons, were a common sight. Across the coasts of Europe, they brought terror. They were skilled sailors who navigated by the stars. They were fierce warriors, wielding axes and swords with deadly skill. Their raids were legendary. Villages would tremble at the sight of their sails. Monasteries, rich with treasures, were favorite targets. This is the story of how the wolves of the North Sea became the architects of a new age. From their fierce beginnings, they would evolve into a force that would shape the future. Join us as we delve into the epic saga of the Normans. As the Viking Age surged forward, one name echoed with particular dread: Rollo. A warrior of unmatched ferocity, Rollo led his men on daring raids. Their target? The wealthy kingdom of West Francia. Up the Seine River they sailed, their longships a menacing sight. The heart of Francia trembled. The rich cities along the Seine, like Paris, lived in fear. Rollo's raids were relentless. Monasteries were sacked, villages burned, and treasures carried off to the north. The Frankish people cried out for protection from the Northmen's fury. Their king, Charles the Simple, seemed powerless to stop them. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Charles decided to gamble. Following the relentless Viking raids, the year was 911 AD. Charles the Simple, king of West Francia, sent an envoy to Rollo. The message was simple, yet audacious. In return for peace, Rollo and his Vikings would be granted a large swathe of land at the mouth of the Seine. This land, strategically vital, was a thorn in the side of the Frankish kingdom. But it could be Rollo's, on one condition. Rollo saw the wisdom in Charles's offer. The land was fertile, promising prosperity for his people. The deal, however, came with a price. Rollo would have to swear fealty to Charles and accept Christianity. The agreement marked a turning point in history. The year 911 AD marked a turning point. The Vikings, once the scourge of Francia, had a new role to play. They were now guardians of the realm. The land granted to Rollo became known as Normandy. The name itself, a testament to their origins, land of the Northmen. Rollo saw the potential of this new domain. No longer would his people be bound to the harsh life of raiding. Here they could prosper, build, and grow strong. The Seine, a vital artery, offered access to the heart of Francia. Normandy was more than just a strategic acquisition. They were Normans, a people at the crossroads of two worlds. Following their initial conquests, the transition was not without its challenges. The Vikings, accustomed to the freedom of the seas, now had to adapt to a more settled life. Rollo, a pragmatic leader, understood the need for assimilation. He encouraged his people to embrace Frankish ways. Intermarriage was common, blending Viking blood with that of the Franks. The Norse language gradually gave way to the langue d'oil. Rollo converted to Christianity, taking the name Robert. Churches and monasteries, once targets of Viking raids, were now built and revered. The Normans brought their own traditions and values to their new homeland. With Rollo's leadership, Normandy began to flourish. The Normans adopted the feudal system from their Frankish neighbors. This led to the rise of a new Norman aristocracy, replacing the old Viking chieftains. They constructed imposing stone castles to project their power. Once feared raiders, the Normans had transformed into respected members of the Frankish realm. As the Normans settled in their new lands, they began to blend their Viking seafaring tradition with Frankish cavalry tactics, giving rise to a new kind of warrior, the Norman knight. These warriors, mounted on powerful war horses, clad in chainmail and armed with lances and swords, were a force to be reckoned with. They trained relentlessly, honing their skills in tournaments and mock battles. The Normans embraced the concept of chivalry, a code of conduct that emphasized courage, loyalty, and honor on the battlefield. The Norman cavalry charge became legendary throughout Europe. They understood the importance of combined arms warfare, They were masters of siege warfare, building sophisticated siege engines. The Norman military machine would soon make its mark on the world stage. Following their initial settlement, the Norman assimilation into Frankish society was a calculated strategy for survival and growth. Rollo's successors, while adopting the customs and language of their neighbors, never forgot their Viking heritage. The fertile lands of Normandy yielded bountiful harvests. The Normans, embracing agricultural innovations, transformed the region into a breadbasket. The Dukes of Normandy strategically expanded their territory. Through cunning diplomacy and military campaigns, they annexed neighboring lands. The Norman banner flew over an increasingly large swathe of northern France. They built a network of formidable castles, symbols of Norman dominance. Emerging from their Viking roots, the Normans, through cultural fusion, developed a unique character. They embodied a blend of rugged Viking individualism and the refined sensibilities of their Frankish neighbors. Renowned for their martial prowess, their skill in warfare was unmatched. Norman knights were a fearsome sight on the battlefield, but the Normans were more than just warriors. They were also astute administrators and pragmatic rulers, establishing efficient systems of governance. They were generous patrons of the church, building grand cathedrals and monasteries. As the Normans solidified their conquests, their influence extended beyond the battlefield. A vibrant culture blossomed, a rich tapestry woven from the threads of their dual heritage. Norman patrons became renowned for their support of the arts. Norman architecture, a breathtaking blend of Viking boldness and Frankish elegance, left an indelible mark on the landscape. The imposing castles served as symbols of Norman power and permanence, but it was the churches and cathedrals that truly exemplified the Norman artistic spirit. Inspired by the Romanesque style, Norman architects created soaring spaces filled with light. Norman illuminated manuscripts showcased the artistry of Norman scribes. As the 11th century dawned, following their consolidation of power in Normandy, Normandy stood as a beacon of stability and prosperity. The Normans, once feared Viking raiders, had transformed themselves into a powerful and sophisticated force in European affairs. But their story was far from over. The seeds of ambition were about to bear fruit far beyond their borders. The Normans never lost their taste for conquest. Their gaze turned towards new horizons, new opportunities for glory and expansion. Norman adventurers carved out domains in southern Italy and Sicily. The Norman Duke, William the Bastard, had his eyes on the English throne. As the 11th century progressed, the Normans solidified their position as a dominant force. Their duchy commanded both respect and fear from neighboring realms. They had evolved into kingmakers and influential power brokers. Renowned for their military prowess, the Normans were feared throughout Europe. The Norman knight epitomized the perfect blend of Viking ferocity and Frankish chivalry. Their cavalry charges could shatter enemy formations with ease. Masters of logistics and strategy, they orchestrated their campaigns with precision. Norman castles stood as impregnable strongholds, symbols of their unyielding dominance. Section 2. Echoes of the North. As we delve deeper into the Norman legacy, we must explore their profound impact on warfare. The Normans revolutionized warfare in Western Europe, blending Viking seafaring traditions with Frankish cavalry tactics to devastating effect. Their armies, a balanced force of heavily armed knights, skilled archers, and disciplined infantry, could fight effectively on land and sea, making them a formidable adversary in any terrain. The Normans understood the importance of mobility. Their cavalry, unlike the slow-moving mounted troops of other armies, could cover vast distances quickly, allowing them to strike swiftly and decisively. This mobility, coupled with their superior tactics and discipline, gave them a decisive edge on the battlefield. Furthermore, the Normans were masters of siege warfare. They had learned from the Franks, inheriting their knowledge of siege engines and fortifications, but they also brought their own ingenuity to bear. Norman castles, with their concentric defenses, high walls, and strategically placed towers, were notoriously difficult to capture, while their siege weapons could reduce enemy fortifications to rubble. This blend of Viking seafaring prowess and Frankish military innovation created a potent mix. The Normans could launch amphibious assaults, raid coastal settlements, and transport armies and supplies with a speed and efficiency that astonished their enemies. Their impact on the art of war was profound, shaping military thinking for centuries to come. As we move forward, we will see how these military innovations influenced their conquests and governance, leaving a lasting legacy on the regions they controlled. Section 3. The Conqueror's Gamble, William's audacious claim. Following the turbulent events that shaped Normandy, William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, emerged as a ruler of immense ambition and ruthless determination. A direct descendant of Rollo, the Viking chieftain who had founded the Norman duchy, William inherited a legacy of conquest and a thirst for power. He also had a claim to the English throne, a claim that would set in motion one of the most daring invasions in history. The English throne was a prize worth fighting for. England, although plagued by internal divisions and Viking raids, was a wealthy kingdom with vast resources. William, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to seize this prize, to add the crown of England to his ducal coronet. His claim was tenuous, based on a distant blood tie and a supposed promise made by the English king Edward the Confessor. But William, a master of propaganda and intimidation, gathered support for his cause, promising his Norman barons lands and titles in conquered England. The audacity of William's ambition shocked many. England, after all, was a powerful kingdom, and its king, Harold Godwinson, was a seasoned warrior. But William, convinced of the righteousness of his claim and emboldened by the strength of his army, was undeterred. He would cross the Channel and claim what he believed was rightfully his. Following their rise to power in Normandy, 1066, the year the Normans redrew the map. The year 1066 would forever be etched in the annals of English history. In that fateful year, William the Bastard, Duke of Normandy, set sail with a mighty fleet, determined to seize the English crown. The Norman invasion, a gamble of epic proportions, would transform the political and cultural landscape of England. The Battle of Hastings, fought on a windswept hill in southern England, was a clash of two cultures, two styles of warfare. The English, led by the courageous but outmaneuvered Harold Godwinson, fought with their traditional courage, but they were no match for the Norman knights. The Norman cavalry, charging with disciplined fury, broke through the English lines time and again. The English, fighting on foot with axes and swords, fought bravely, but were gradually worn down. The death of Harold, struck in the eye by a stray arrow, sealed the fate of England. William's victory at Hastings was decisive. He marched on London, crushing the last vestiges of English resistance. On Christmas Day, 1066, William the Bastard was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, marking the beginning of the Norman conquest. The Normans, in one swift and brutal campaign, had conquered a kingdom and changed the course of history. As the dust settled from the Battle of Hastings, a new order began to take shape: the Norman footprint on England. The Norman conquest of 1066 was not just a military victory, it was a cultural earthquake. William the Conqueror, now King of England, moved swiftly to consolidate his power, imposing a new order on his conquered realm. The old Anglo-Saxon elite was systematically replaced by Norman loyalists, their lands and titles distributed amongst William's followers. The Norman language, a dialect of French, became the language of the court, law, and administration. English, relegated to the status of a common tongue, would nevertheless absorb thousands of Norman words, enriching and transforming the language in ways that are still evident today. William, a shrewd ruler, understood the importance of securing his new kingdom. He ordered the construction of massive stone castles, symbols of Norman power, across the English countryside. These castles, strategically placed to control key routes and dominate the landscape, served as garrisons for Norman troops and as administrative centers for the new regime. The Norman conquest had a profound impact on English society. The feudal system, already established in Normandy, was imposed on England, transforming the relationship between the king, his lords, and the common people. The Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey of landholdings, was commissioned by William to assess his new wealth and to ensure the efficient collection of taxes. following their military conquests, the Normans as cultural architects. The Normans, despite their reputation as ruthless warriors, were also great builders and patrons of the arts. They brought with them to England a sophisticated culture, influenced by their Frankish neighbours and their own Viking heritage. This cultural fusion would leave an enduring mark on English art, architecture and law. Norman architecture, characterized by its massive scale, rounded arches and intricate carvings, transformed the English landscape. Cathedrals, abbeys and castles, built with a grandeur and ambition that dwarfed earlier Anglo-Saxon structures, rose across the land. Durham Cathedral, with its soaring nave and ribbed vaults, is a masterpiece of Norman Romanesque architecture, a testament to their engineering skills and artistic vision. The Normans were also great patrons of literature and learning. Monasteries, revived under Norman rule, became centers of scholarship and manuscript production. The Anglo-Norman literature that flourished in the centuries after the conquest, a unique blend of French and English traditions, would lay the foundation for the great works of Chaucer and Shakespeare. Norman innovations in law and administration had a lasting impact on English governance. They introduced trial by jury, a cornerstone of the English legal system, and established a centralized system of justice that replaced the more fragmented Anglo-Saxon courts. The Exchequer, a sophisticated system of financial administration, was established to manage the royal treasury, ensuring the financial stability of the Norman regime. As we reflect on the Norman legacy, we see its enduring impact in the modern world. The Norman conquest was a pivotal moment in English and European history. It marked the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England, but it also ushered in a new era of Norman dominance that would shape the political and cultural landscape of Europe for centuries. The echoes of this momentous event can still be felt today in the language we speak, the laws we live by, and the monuments that grace our landscapes. The English language, enriched by thousands of Norman French words, bears witness to the linguistic fusion that followed the conquest. Words like castle, court, justice, and parliament all have their roots in Norman French, a testament to the enduring impact of Norman rule on English culture. The legal system we know today, with its emphasis on due process, trial by jury, and the rule of law, owes much to the innovations introduced by the Normans. Their emphasis on a centralized legal system with royal courts and a codified body of law replaced the more haphazard Anglo-Saxon system, laying the foundation for the development of English common law. But perhaps the most visible legacy of the Normans is in the built environment. Castles, cathedrals, and abbeys, built with a grandeur and permanence that surpassed anything that had come before, still stand as testaments to Norman ambition and architectural prowess. These structures, once symbols of Norman power, are now cherished landmarks, reminding us of a pivotal chapter in our shared history. As we conclude our journey through the annals of history, we arrive at the final chapter of our saga. From sea wolves to empire builders, the unlikely rise of the Normans. The story of the Normans is a testament to the transformative power of adaptation and ambition. From their origins as fierce Viking raiders, they evolved into sophisticated rulers, builders, and patrons of the arts. Their journey, from the icy fjords of Scandinavia to the rolling hills of England, is a tale of cultural fusion, military prowess, and an unwavering will to power. The Normans were never bound by convention or tradition. They were masters of adaptation, absorbing the customs and languages of those they conquered, yet never losing sight of their own heritage. They were ruthless when necessary, but also pragmatic and shrewd, understanding that lasting power came from a balance of force and diplomacy. Their impact on Europe was profound. They reshaped the political map of Western Europe, establishing kingdoms and duchies that would endure for centuries. They left an indelible mark on the art, architecture, and law of the lands they conquered, their cultural influence extending far beyond their political borders. The Normans, those unlikely empire builders, stand as a reminder that history is not a linear progression, but a tapestry woven from threads of conquest, adaptation, and cultural exchange. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of human ambition, and a reminder that even the most fearsome wolves can, given time and opportunity, transform themselves into architects of a new world.